Hey everybody, me and my friends just finished a full playthrough of Big Walk, and we had a pretty good time of it, and basically, I just want some excuse to talk about the game, and I found this tier list, so thought I would take a try at ranking some of these puzzles. There's a lot of variety and a lot of different kind of concepts, so I think they'd all be pretty fun to talk about. Um, what you should know before we get into it is we had a three-player group. I play the game with my friends BSM and Render. If you're curious, BSM did a record and stream the entire thing. I can link the full episode in the description, or the full first episode. You can find the rest from there. Um, but yeah, I think overall we all had a pretty good time. We all had a pretty good impression of the game. I think as we went on and got kind of towards in the completionist mindset, maybe it got a little bit old at times, but even by the end of it, I think we still pretty much enjoyed every single puzzle we did, at least to some extent. Although I'm sure we'll find that some are definitely better than others. Um, in terms of what I'm going to be ranking for all these puzzles, I'm not really going to be too, I don't know, like game designy about it. I think I'm just going to kind of go off of vibes. What that means is it's going to be a very personal tier list, right? I'm going to be incorporating just like how early the puzzles were. I think the earlier ones are going to be generally fare better because it was still a bit more novel at the time. Um, if we had any like stupid goofs and gaffs that we enjoyed during any particular puzzle, that might come into play. So basically, like, just don't take it too seriously because I'm sure everybody has different experiences. But we'll get into that as we start talking about the individual puzzles. Other patterns to look out for. I'm anticipating that the ones where you walk around a lot are probably gonna be um I'm gonna like a little bit less. I mean, I know the game is called Big Walk, but a little bit too much walking uh can get grating. Though we did have a good time just walking around. The scenery is very pleasant and the ambiance, so it could be a lot worse, to be honest. Yeah, and that's about it. I think the only other thing to note here is that we did do every single puzzle in the game, so there are going to be spoilers in this video if you have not played the whole thing. I'm going to try to go through them roughly in order. So if I get to a point where you're not familiar, then maybe that's a good sign to skip around or switch off or whatever. But if you haven't gotten the ending to the game, keep in mind that I will be covering that too. Whew, okay, so let's get started. The 4 tutorial puzzles are going to be a little bit tricky to rank here because they are, in fact, tutorials and they do function as such. Like, they're not overly complicated, but they do teach you. So, like, that is an important part of the game, of course. But, as a downside, they're maybe not as fun. Or, like, maybe they're overly basic. I mean, a lot of the puzzles in this game are maybe overly basic, you could argue, but these ones especially. And also, I on the first episode, I got out of bounds, and I don't think I was even around for like half of them. It's kind of hard to remember. What I do remember for sure is the tutorial stacking puzzle because it's basically right outside the starting area, and I think we all wandered to it straight away. And that was our first introduction to the weird anvil with the pear-shaped little MacGuffin in it. And it's a pretty simple thing. You just press the button and you're good to go. But it's all very charming figuring out exactly how it works. Seeing an anvil be like a core mechanic of the game was amusing to find, and I think honestly it's a pretty fun introduction to the game. Even though it's the world's simplest puzzle, I'm gonna stick it right there in A. The other ones I think are gonna go down a notch. They might live here in B just because they're about as simple. There's not really a lot going on here. But you're kind of already familiar with the anvil and the pear thing, so it's not as fun. But they do teach you things, like the whole like pegs with the symbols on them and tutorial signs. That's obviously a recurring trope, a recurring puzzle element. The tutorial telescope thing teaches you that you have to sometimes separate and kind of cooperate at a distance, which is definitely an important thing to know. And then tutorial timing teaches you about the timing buttons, which is important because I didn't even know how they work for a long time. I don't think I realized they had a cooldown when the button shows up red for a long time. So maybe that speaks to that tutorial not being very good. But whatever. I think they all do fine as tutorials, and they're nothing to write home about, but they're all pretty short, so who's to say? Basketball, it's just basically a mini game, nothing too fancy here, but there's a reason why this is a staple mini game in a million different games. It's just fun to throw a physics object into a hole, and it probably will be every single time. It's not overly long, it's pretty simple to do, and it was fun to just throw some shit into a hole with the boys, so that's gonna go in A. Okay, blind obstacle course and blind signs, the two blind puzzles in the game where you have to wear the lemon head. Out of these two, we actually encountered them both pretty early, even though blind signs, especially, I think is kind of on the other side of the map. We just kind of stumbled there pretty early on. And I think these are both very enjoyable puzzles because they are, you definitely have to like try a little to do them. You have to like, especially if you're wearing the lemon head, you really have to think about where you are and like make a mental map of everything. It's difficult, but not impossible at all. I think we did these on like our second or third try for both. I would say that blind obstacle course is a little bit better. Maybe I'm biased because I was the one who completed the obstacle course in the end, and I probably feel some pride and accomplishment for that. But I just think that the blind signs one is a little bit too repetitive. It like there's just kind of too many layers, the like steps you have to climb, and it's a lot of like walking back and forth and finding the little pins with the symbols on them is charming in a way while you're blind, but I mean, I think my main qualm is just that I think it's a little bit too long and it overstays its welcome and kind of does the same thing for a little bit too long. So I might actually push that down to C. I don't know. Maybe these will move around a little bit later. I'm thinking maybe do I move the tutorial ones down a little bit because they are so simple, but we'll see how the tier list shapes up and we can change it later. Okay, Button Auditorium. There's not very many puzzles in this game that I don't like. This might actually be one of the few that I don't think is very good. Usually there's like something redeeming about all of these puzzles that I enjoy, but I could be wrong here. In this one, somebody goes to the top of the auditorium in that little chamber, and they have the answer key, and the person at the bottom has a set of buttons, and they just have to press them. So basically, the person outside just communicates between the two, and there's actually kind of a lot of puzzles that fit that overall sort of pattern of one person kind of conveying information between the other two. Sometimes there's a novel twist that I think makes it fine. Other times it does kind of repeat itself. I think Button Auditorium might be the worst one. You basically just have to be like, oh, it's this one. Oh, it's that one. And it's not exactly that complicated. Although I'm actually not 100% sure that is how the puzzle worked. But if I can't even remember how it works, then maybe it wasn't that memorable to begin with. So I would put this puzzle in D, but there's one thing that brings it back up a little bit, and that is that it has good vibes. I like that it's like a stage. It's got a good kind of like aesthetic. It's also the only place in the entire game where you can find those nice little lawn chairs with the kind of like overlapping stripe pattern. And those chairs are sick. It's amazing that you can carry your friends around in them. That's like I don't think you can do that with anything else in the game that I can think of. So it's got a lot of good vibes, even though the puzzle itself is pretty bad. And I'm wrapping all of that in there. The chairs and the auditorium itself are gonna, be rolled up in the overall vibe of the puzzle. So I think I can only bump it up one spot because I wish the puzzle was more interesting, but I love those chairs. I do love those chairs. All right, Button Houses is probably one of the best puzzles in the game. So there's a lot of puzzles in this game, or like a handful of them, that just have a little bit of an awe factor. Like just when you see it, you're like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like it has a little bit of like a surprise factor. Like it tickles you just the way that it is. And Button Houses is definitely one of them. You walk into either of those two houses, and it's utterly hilarious how many buttons there are. It may be a little bit overwhelming, but it's actually a pretty manageable task. It's not actually that hard. And honestly, it is like enjoyable trying to find a way to describe the locations of these buttons to your your partner basically. In the 3-player version, one person is kind of like playing telephone between the other two people. And it makes me wonder if in the 4-player version there's like a 2-stage telephone thing, which I think would be fun. In our case, Render was the one that was shuttling between me and BSM, and I'm pretty sure he just did a perfect job every time. But it could be interesting if you have like 2 layers of telephone where maybe some of it gets lost in translation. Though I could also see this puzzle getting a little frustrating if you repeatedly fail it. I don't know if the puzzle is reset if you miss once, like if all your progress goes away. I think that's how at least I always thought they worked, but I'm not exactly sure because we never really tended to mess up the puzzles that have a progress bar because we're so good at the damn game and we're beasts. So um, basically what I'm saying is the presentation is funny. It's a fun puzzle to just run into and see, and the actual gameplay of it is fun and it makes you use your noggin a little bit, which not every puzzle does. Let me put it that way. So it's definitely an S tier puzzle. I love the button houses. Okay, camo button and coordinate box. I think these are all in alphabetical order, so it's kind of funny that these are grouped up together just by coincidence. They're both puzzles where you go to a set of coordinates, and I think it's useful because we can kind of compare them side by side. They do ask you to do a pretty similar thing. The coordinate box gives you the box that tells you your coordinates, and it tells you to go to 2 different coordinates, whereas the camo box does not. It just tells the actual pair MacGuffin you need is right there, and you have to just send somebody else to the coordinates, and hopefully they open it at the right time. And you might be surprised if you are not ready for the fact that the button does not stay open permanently. Somebody has to be ready to pick up the pair. So there is that little bit of surprise coordination, which is kind of fun. But overall, I think the coordinate box definitely takes it. At least for our playthrough, it was just kind of fun because we wrote down the coordinates on that whiteboard. I mean, like we were kind of role playing. Like you can always just like write it down on a notepad or whatever, and you can like talk on Discord instead of using the in-game stuff. But we kind of like are trying to meet the game where it's at and play by its rules and just use all the in-game stuff because it's more fun. So that's what we did. We ended up taking the board, like that tells you where to go, and the whiteboard, or no, maybe just the whiteboard, and then the coordinate box itself. And it was just kind of fun to juggle those things and try to work out the coordinates. So I guess what I'm saying is I think the addition of the actual coordinate box with the numbers on it is just kind of a fun little toy to carry around. And it might be small, but it does elevate the puzzle slightly. But I do think that these puzzles are so similar that whichever one you run into first, at least for me, is going to be the more fun one because they are so reminiscent of each other. In our case, we did the coordinate box first, so we thought it was, I thought it was a good time, and I liked the box. And then the camo button was actually one of the last buttons we did, or one of the last puzzles we did, which I think made it a bit stale, and I don't think is that's fun because you don't get to use the thingy. I guess I should also say the camo button is one of the ones where you have to split up, and that can be fun because it lets you all get lost a little bit. But at that point in the game, we were so familiar with the map that it was more of an inconvenience. So I almost think that camo button might actually bump down to C tier. Yeah, and you know what? I think I might put the tutorial ones in C because they are so plain, even if they do function as a good tutorial. I think I will elevate blind signs because I like the blind puzzles more than any of these. Cool. Counting cameras. The cameras show you little heads when you press a button, and you have to stand in an arrangement where you can see all of them flashing in order to count the right amount. What I like about this puzzle, and you cannot say this for many of the puzzles, or for almost all of them, is that counting cameras is confusing to figure out. At least it was for our group. It's a little bit unclear what to do. The setup is weird. There's like a weird like calculator on the wall. You might not realize that the cameras are like flashing symbols when you press the button, which we didn't for a few minutes at least. And frankly, I still don't even really know. There's like an archway with the light on it, and I think there's an extra button on that archway, and I don't even know what that does. Which maybe makes the puzzle more confusing than it needs to be. I mean, maybe if you explain to me what it was there for, then I'll understand. But as far as I'm concerned, maybe it's a bit overcomplicated. But in this case, I think that works in its favor in a way because it is kind of fun to work out how the puzzle actually works. That's more of the puzzle than the puzzle itself. Finding places to stand, you know, you have to try a couple angles for sure, and do some coordination, which I think is pretty fun. But I don't know. I don't think the process of actually counting is particularly thrilling. So I think there's like some good parts and some bad parts of this puzzle. I'm gonna put it in B, kind of to average it out. I don't think it's very fun to execute, but kind of working out how it works, I think, is the most interesting and fun part. Cool. Distant timing might be one of the simplest puzzles in the whole game. Basically, there's just 3 pedestals in my case because there were 3 people, and then there's this giant like metal structure looking thing that drops the pair once all the buttons have been pressed at roughly the same time. So the tutorial puzzle kind of already does this. This one might require slightly more coordination because you can't hear each other, but not much more, I don't think. I mean, there's a cooldown, but basically in my memory, we all just kind of went to them. I think we might have had radios, which trivialized it. For most of the puzzles, we didn't really use radios, even though they would help a lot, mostly because they were inconvenient to carry around, but also, like, you know, it's fun to do the puzzle as it's intended, basically. But in our case, that made it trivial, and I think the most interesting part about the puzzle is the giant metal striped structure on which the pair lives. And we did briefly lose it when it fell down because it was the middle of the night, which was a little bit fun. But I think it speaks to the fact that I'm talking more about the aesthetic design of it and the part where we had to look for the MacGuffin rather than the puzzle itself. I don't think it's very good. It might be C, maybe it's even worse. It might be one of the few D tier puzzles that I'm going to do here. I'll stick it in D for now. I don't have very good things to say about Flare Button either. It is fun to shoot the flare gun, but it is just very simple. It might not help that I was the one doing the flare, so I just kind of sat here and pushed the button over and over while my friends went and figured out what to do. But as far as I understand it, you just kind of go to where the flare is shooting, and this is just one of those puzzles where you just walk to a thing, and that's the whole puzzle. There's not really more to it. I think this will probably go in D tier. You know, it's not like overly long, but it's just not very interesting. Cool. Frisbee Timer was one of the first puzzles we did in the entire playthrough, which I think will give it some novelty points here. And, you know, I think it's a fun concept. It's really simple, but you just gotta have somebody catch the tomato and then throw it up. I don't know why it's called a Frisbee in this tier list. It's not really a Frisbee at all. But yeah, it's basically you're just playing catch with your boys. You really only have to do it once, and you'll probably get it. It's not very hard to do, but it's just fun to throw shit in this game. So I'm just gonna throw it an A. It's simple, but some of the, you know, you don't have to have a complicated puzzle for it to be fun for like 30 seconds. So that's all good. All right, for Jester Houses, or as we like to call it in our group, the House. This is one of those puzzles where you have a third party or the third player relay information between the other two. I think that kind of format shows up a bit too much in this game. Like, a lot of the puzzles sort of do the same thing, and that makes it kind of stand out less. If this was the only puzzle like that in the entire game, I don't think I would care as much. But at least for this one, you do get to make some fun poses. I think the biggest downside of this puzzle is that it doesn't really give you a lot of leeway with how to communicate the information, because the poses are just literally holding your hands up in a certain way. Like, the most obvious way to communicate that is what everyone's going to do, which is they just make the same exact poses because that's what you're supposed to do. But I just wish there was like a little bit more room for interpretation and kind of coming up with your own system. But in this case, it's so prescribed based on the actual, you know, what's on those panels that it's fun to do, kind of, but there's no real thinking involved at all. Like, the solution is just extremely obvious. Yeah, we'll get to this again for its sequel puzzle. If you've done it, you'll know what I mean. I think that one's a lot better, but this one's pretty simple. I think I'm going to stick it in B. It's fun enough, but nothing thrilling. Green and red orbs, I think, was actually the very last puzzle we did in the game. So at that point, maybe it's as stale as it's gonna get, the game. Um, and once you kind of realize how the puzzle works, it, I think, kind of overstays its welcome a little bit. It's just kind of like, well, you got to find a way to mark or memorize the ones that are red and then hit all the ones that are green, and that's it. I think most reasonable people would just use whatever objects they have around them, including the little light orbs that are nearby, to mark the ones that you should not press, and it's pretty simple otherwise. I think where it shines is that there's so many of these stupid buttons that you are inevitably going to kind of go out of sync with your team. It's not like one person can do them all. You all have to run around and kind of do them together. And it's easy to kind of lose track. Like, oh, maybe like you haven't been in this particular area before, so you're a little bit less familiar with it. Basically, what I'm saying is it's there's enough orbs to press that you're never quite sure that you have the right one, which is kind of fun, but I think it is just a little bit too simple. I think the strongest part about the puzzle is actually just its aesthetic. I think it looks cool. I like how the loading bar is on a big pillar in the middle, and I think it makes like kind of like a chord or like some kind of like a satisfying buzz noise as you go. So just kind of the setup of the puzzle is kind of satisfying and fun, and it looks cool. But I didn't find it that fun, but I think a lot of that comes down to it being our very last puzzle. But I didn't hate it, so I think it's going to sit here and be with the other kind of mediocre feeling puzzles. Cool. The headphones button. Wait, okay, is this the one where you listen to... No, that's microphone check. This is also one of the last puzzles we did. Basically, for this one, you listen to the headphones, and it is hooked up to a microphone somewhere in the world, and your objective is to figure out where that is. This is one of the puzzles, kind of like... What was it? Counting Cameras, where it is, for our group at least, it was unclear how the puzzle worked, but that became the puzzle itself, right? You have to figure out what to do, and that can be fun on its own. We were a little stumped for a little while. I think we had to go back and, I don't know, we were like wondering if maybe we were missing one of the radio stations that was relevant to the puzzle, which turned out to be sort of true. In order to solve it, you have to go to one of the radio station areas that plays music, and it has a lot of different speakers that play slightly different music. And one of those you're supposed to match to what you hear in the headphones, and that's where the pair is. So what I do like about this puzzle is, yeah, like I said, it's kind of, you have to figure out how it works, and once you kind of sort out that it's a microphone out there in the world, it's kind of cool. I think it's a cool idea, and it's fun to kind of theorize where it might be based on the sounds you hear. I kind of wish there was like a little bit more of a hint, like some sound cue that it could play that could maybe make it a bit more obvious. Because like there's a lot of music in this game, right? It wasn't obvious to us where we've heard this before, if we had at all. Like maybe if a train went by occasionally. Well, I mean, do they even make noise? I think they might make a little bit of noise. That could make it a little bit more consistent, I think. I did like that you could hear the box opening and closing when you push the button. That's kind of what clued us in ultimately to realizing that it was a mic out there in the world. And I think it's also fun that you have to like go to the right speaker when you actually find the music area, and that'll clue you in if you remember what it sounds like to where you have to go. I think the biggest problem with this puzzle is just that it's one of the ones where you have to walk really far away and separate your group, and I think it's complicated enough that separating the group actually does kind of, it's a bit of a detriment here. I think it would be a little bit better if the whole group could kind of explore together and find it, and I mean, it wasn't that bad. Basically, what happened to us is I just ran away back to the button and I pressed it for them, and that was it. I like how you can hear your teammates on the mic as well. That was a fun touch. So I don't really know where that puts it. It's one that makes you use your noggin, but it's just kind of I think there's a little bit too much opportunity to get lost and just wander the world forever if you can't really work out where the sound is or where you've heard it before. So, I mean, for us, it didn't take that long, but we did wander a little bit. So I think I'm going to put it in B tier. But conceptually, I think this puzzle is really, really cool. Cool, 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 cool. Next up, Heavy Ball, one of our earliest puzzles. This puzzle is really simple. I think it's really obvious what the gimmick is once you find the flag and the ball. But it did crack us up, Like, a lot of these puzzles, they're just, like, funny. When you see them, you're like, okay, like, I get the gimmick. And it's amusing to realize how you're supposed to solve it. And then it's nice that the puzzle isn't actually that long. Like, you can get to the top of the hill and put it into the flag, like the golf hole, in like maybe, like, I don't know, like 60 seconds, maybe a little bit longer than that. It's also fun that it's on a giant hill, so I think there's the opportunity for it to roll very far away, which sounds frustrating but also amusing. I don't think we had that problem, but it is a fun thought. It is a bit simple, but I think I'm okay with putting it in A. It's kind of like the Frisbee timer. They're both simple, and they both don't overstay their welcome, basically. Hot Potato is another one that we got really, really early on. I think these are actually quite close to each other. Yeah, so at this point in the game, we were so new to it that we were just happy to run around and explore a maze. Like, even that part is fun. I think it's smart of the game to not make it an actual maze. It's not very big and complicated. While that is kind of amusing and on theme with the game, I think it would have just kind of gotten old pretty quick. So I like that they just went with the small maze that is visibly a maze, and it's like, oh, we could do a little hedge maze, how fun. And it's fun that they also incorporated a little bit of multiplayer interaction in there, where you have to take the tomato and put it through a hole you can't just run through on your own. You do need the help of your friends, and you need to, like, realize that that's what to do. It's not hard to do, but it is simple and it's fun. And just like the other two we just talked about, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's simple and fun for as long as it needs to be. So, fun stuff. Another A tier puzzle here. That is kind of a theme with the A tier, I think. A lot of simple puzzles, but they are still fun to do with your buds. Blind, obstacle course, and coordinate box are maybe the odd ones out. Alrighty, invisible signs. In this one, you have somebody hold up the sign and somebody on the microscope. That's not a microscope, that's a telescope. And the telescope sees the invisible ink on that sign, so you know where to put it. And then you have to memorize what's on what sign and lock yourself out of the telescope room and put the signs in the right place once it gives you a combination to put in. It's the kind of thing where, like, once you realize that the tiles are not actually blank, it's really simple and you know exactly what to do. Maybe you're not exactly expecting that it might be so hard to remember which one's which, but I mean, all the detritus outside, I think, makes it pretty obvious that you're kind of supposed to use some kind of like a mnemonic with the random objects outside. And it's simple, but I think this is one that you get to be a little bit creative with your solution. You get to kind of like be like, oh, well, this symbol kind of looks like that thing if you squint the right way, and kind of convince your teammates that that's a good system. So I do like the puzzles where you have to kind of communicate an idea, and unlike the gesture houses over here, it's not just like there's one very obvious solution that's like the way to do it. Like, everyone's going to have a different way that they denote which sign is which. And every time I can force my teammates to think about buttholes is another win for me. So I really enjoyed the giant butthole sex toy outside. That was very amusing for me. So yeah, I think this is probably top of A tier, maybe even S. I think I'll stick it in S. It's not like phenomenal, but I do like having to come up with your own system, and it's just kind of a chatter heavy puzzle. It's just fun. I think a lot of the same can be said for Keto Interpretation. It's a very similar puzzle. Sort of. I mean, you have to separate your team in this one, but the same sort of concept of you guys have to come up with a system of communicating information in an unconventional way. And just like the invisible sign thing here, like there's not really like a one-to-one way to do it. So you kind of have to be like, oh well, if you kind of squint and like look at it at a certain angle, like oh maybe this um, piece of play structure equipment kind of looks like one of the um, like the tile locations you have to match, basically. I think it was very smart on the developers to not just have all of the tile receptacles be in like a straight line or something like that. They were all kind of shaped in a memorable way, which really gave you a lot to work with when it came to trying to map it to some structure in the room. Uh, Bonus points here because the kettle is just a very silly item that our team liked a lot. It's just funny because it's, I don't know, it's just kind of random, I guess, and it's like weirdly, I don't know, like sophisticated of a model and kind of specific and just like so silly. And it's just fun to have a kettle. So we were very amused to be moving these around. It's just kind of like, I don't know, like being in this room and setting up the kettles is just fun to do. To be honest, I think that's what it comes down to. I also like the actual puzzle of having a shared space where the two halves of the team have to kind of leave a message for each other. I don't really think any of the other puzzles have anything quite like that. So it's also very novel. So I think this is a firmly S tier puzzle. I think Button Houses still beats it out, and Invisible Signs is not as good, but I do like the Kettle one a lot. Cool. Light Signs is kind of a mediocre puzzle. I think this puzzle is carried by the fact that it looks like the person in the red light room is in a police interrogation chamber. There's just a chair for no reason. You're looking at them through a one-way mirror or a one-way glass window, and it has like this kind of like reinforced grid texture on it. So it just kind of feels like you're interrogating whoever is in there. But I think it's pretty simple to just either hold up the signs and basically as long as you come up with a system for communicating yes or no, that is enough to beat this puzzle. I like that there was a little bit of room for interpretation. We ended up just having the person with the red light count up to where the panel that the person's holding has to go. So if it goes in the 5th slot, you press the button 5 times. So there's a little bit of room to kind of come up with the system of your own and make it faster. But once you get like one symbol, then it's kind of, I think we were just like, yeah, we just have to do this 5 times, which is basically, I think it gets a little bit too fast. But I like the vibes of the puzzle. It is just weirdly reminiscent of an interrogation room for no reason, and that tickles me. That simply tickles me. So I think that puts it in B. I think without the weird interrogation room nonsense, it'll go in C, but that's where it goes. Microphone check is maybe one of the only puzzles that we didn't really solve. I have since come to learn that I think the way you solve this puzzle is the person sitting in the chair, all of the microphones you can press make a noise, but only one of them makes it in both the left and right sides of your headphones, which we did not figure out. I ended up kind of guiding everybody through it, but my impression was that like one of them was just a little bit louder, which I guess is kind of true, but not in a reason I could figure out. But hey, you know what? We did figure it out in the end, and it was kind of difficult. We didn't really know exactly what we were doing, but we still got it. So it wasn't like frustratingly annoying to figure out, but still kind of unintuitive. That left room for like a lot of guessing and theorizing, which was fun. I don't think it's like amazing, but I like that it wasn't overly easy. I think it's gonna live in B tier. Whew, okay, getting there almost to the endgame puzzles here, it looks like. Maybe not quite yet. Next up is music signs. In the music signs, you communicate with one person who knows the sounds you want, and one person, I mean, I guess there could be multiple on either side in our case, because we have an odd number. But one side has the solution with speakers on it, and one side has all of the speakers that play all of the songs, and they have to communicate which speakers go where. This one's fun because you just get to make the music as best as you can through the mic. And it's just fun to do that. It's just a goofy little puzzle where you try to make noises that your mouth is not designed to make. And it feels like a Jackbox game. Like, it's in the sense of like it's just designed to be funny if you just do the thing you're supposed to do. Like, it's silly and fun and not really that difficult, I don't think. I think we got this one first try, but it's just fun to do. I think it's going to be an S tier puzzle. I like to make funny noises, and that's what this puzzle wants you to do. Number houses. This is maybe the best puzzle in terms of this concept of coming up with your own solution for a puzzle, or like your own version of the solution. In this one person has the telescope looking at the other house, and the other house has just some stuff you have to count, and then you have to communicate that number. That's the crux of the puzzle, using a board that you can lift out of the house. And you would like to write a number on that board, but you can't. Instead, you have to use some pegs with some symbols on them. Our group ended up just writing the number in binary by including a peg for a 1 and not having a peg for a 0, which is all very nerdy and cute. So I think it was fun that we had a little cheeky solution. Probably made us feel a little bit smart. It's fun when there's like symbols on the actual pins, so we could have maybe used that, but we didn't need to because we're so smart and hot and cool, which was kind of fun. But yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to do it. Like, we were theorizing after that, like maybe you could use the number of lines on each pin, on each symbol, as like like a tally of 3 for 3 lines, basically, which would have been a fun way to do it too. But I think there's a lot of ways you could do it, and I think that flexibility for how a puzzle can be solved is always strong. So I'm not going to put it in S. I don't think it was like that crazy fun, but I think I like the room for creativity here. Small bonus point for this cool layout of it being on 2 sides of a beach, though it is a little bit annoying that it takes like 30 seconds to run between the two if you need to. But whatever. A tier. Obstacle course. It's actually one of the first ones we did as well, I think. This puzzle kind of... I'm not really sure how to feel about it because I like that it's doing something different. It's one of the only puzzles in the game where you're actually kind of doing parkour. I mean, we were doing parkour like the whole time, basically, but you have to do parkour on purpose for this one. Not that it's that complicated. You just kind of have to lift up your friends and do it that way. But yeah, I mean, like it's cool to have at least one little parkour course in the game. I wish it was a little more complicated because basically it kind of just feels like you're holding W through the whole thing. There's like the part where you press buttons, but whatever, and there's like the timer at the end, but it's such a small timer section that it's like there's absolutely nothing to even do. You just kind of hold W until you're there. So I like that it's unique, but I wish it was a bit more. I wish the parkour was actually a bit more interesting. I don't think if they made it too hard, it would have been a bad thing. I think I'm going to put this one in B. One-Way Signs, I think, might be one of the best puzzles in the game, which is so funny because it's so simple. Now, caveat here, I think this is one of the puzzles that is most different in 2-player from what I've seen, in the sense that the 2-player system is basically completely different. In 3, or I assume 4 players, you have like a one-way radio that only talks to the room that's basically next in line, and then that person talks to the person next in line, and that person talks to the person next in line. So it's this really simple concept of like, you can talk to someone, but they can't talk to you back, at least not easily. They have to go through one more person, or I guess possibly 2 more people in 4-player mode, which, it's not like that complicated. Like, it's easy to see what's going on, but it is surprisingly kind of I don't know, it puts a little bit of like fun, I don't know, tension or like pushback to your communication system, and it's fun to try to kind of solve your way around it and communicate which pins have to go where. And everyone has a piece of the solution, which is, it's cute. This is another puzzle where I could talk about buttholes, which is another great sign. I distinctly remember telling everybody that there's a butthole on the symbol, solution, and it was amusing later to look at the VOD and see my two teammates being slightly confused about it. It's great fun. I think this is an S tier puzzle for sure. I'm not really trying to order the tiers that much, but I think I do feel like this S tier is pretty much in order. I think I like one-way signs more than these two. I think invisible signs is the weakest of the S tier. Scavenger hunt. I would say this puzzle was slightly brought down by the fact that we were looking for one peg for a long time, and Render did not tell me that BSM had it on his back the whole time, and he basically was just waiting for me as a prank to notice that it was on BSM's back. So we ran around the scavenger hunt area for probably like 10 or 15 more minutes than we had to, which started to get a little bit maddening, but it wasn't like that bad. And it's fun to do a little scavenger hunt. I like that there's like kind of different themes for all the different buttons. They're not just like, randomly strewn about without any sort of hint system at all. So like if you have like one left, you always kind of know where to look for it. So it was kind of fun to figure that out. Not complicated, but pretty fun. Kind of like a lot of the other ones, like Heavy Ball and Frisbee Timer. It's just fun to do. Doesn't ask too much of you, but it's fun to look around for the little things. So I think fittingly it'll go right here in A tier with the rest that are like that. Scribbled signs. Yeah, so this reminds me, it's a lot like the speaker puzzle where one side of the team knows what the patterns are, and the other one has way more patterns, and they have to communicate the patterns only through voice. Which is fun because if you look at them, you can maybe see them here. They're like pretty abstract. They all kind of have like little bits and pieces in common. So you have to get pretty specific and make a lot of weird analogies and stuff. And it's just one of those ones where you have to talk a lot and kind of get creative in the way you describe things, and it's just fun because you can like hear each other laugh about how ridiculous you all sound. It has a lot in common with music signs, and I think they're both pretty equally fun. Like it's pretty fun to describe, it turns out, both sounds and weird symbols in weird ways that kind of make sense but also don't, and it's all just very silly and fun. I think I like music signs a bit more because it's funnier to make music with your mouth, but they're both pretty good. Okay, sign collection. This joins the ranking of puzzles where it was not obvious what to do at first, at least not for our group. I mean, I think maybe some people figured it out instantly, but along with some of the headphone ones, it's kind of like we had to kind of scratch our head a little bit and theorize a little bit on what's going on here. But there's so little to do here that eventually you'll probably work out that you have to just take these elements from other puzzles and bring them all here, which is it's a fun idea. I think the idea is a bit more fun than the actual execution because it's just like it's a fun concept to go like loot items from other puzzles and take them with you. You feel like a little goblin doing it, and anytime you feel like a little goblin, that's a good thing, I would say. But the downside is, even if you know exactly where all of these signs are, you have to go get them. And, I don't mind walking around in this game. Like, it's fun. The ambiance is nice. It's peaceful. But there's a lot of walking for this one. You have to walk to 4 different locations, some of which are kind of far away. And it takes a while, and especially if you split up with your friends, which makes sense to do, like we did, because you could all go to a different location. You're going to be walking around alone, probably, and maybe that would be more fun if we had split up early and we could explore. But at that point, when we got to this one, we had already seen basically the whole map, so we were just kind of going through the motions. So I think really fun concept in practice, not as fun as it could be. So it's going to go down to B. But I like what it's doing here. I like stealing from other puzzles. That is so quirky and cool. Slow chairlift fucking sucks. I learned that apparently you can, in fact, throw the signs from one platform to the other. You don't actually have to like sit on the chairlift if you want to get them across, but it is a bit risky. You don't want to lose a sign. But ultimately, I think for most people, what's going to happen when you get to slow chairlift is you see that you have to get signs from one to the other, and maybe you do like a lap to figure out which ones you need. But at the end of the day, you're still going to have to ride that chairlift, I don't know, 3, 4, maybe 5 times and just get the signs that are one at a time. And like I guess I get that like you're trying to minimize the chairlift time, and so you're trying to be kind of efficient, but you still have to ride the chairlift, and it's just it's just a little bit too easy for how obvious, or it's too easy for how slow it is. Like it's better when a puzzle is easy and quick to do, and in this one you just kind of sit there, as you've solved it a long time ago. You just have to like spend the time. I mean, you could say that about a lot of these puzzles, but this one's pretty bad about it. I might even put it down in D tier. Yeah. Next up, soundproof buttons. This falls into the camp of several puzzles where basically one side has a solution, one side has the buttons, and all you really have to do is point to them, or like hold them up and tell the other person where to put it, which I think is done a little bit too many times. It's not really that complicated. By far, the best part of this puzzle is in 3-player mode, when it jump scares you and separates you into 2 halves, which is the other fun part. I like how it surprises you with the divider, which most of the time you can tell it's coming. But in this case, it surprises you, and one person has to communicate to the other two, or that's how it was in my case at least, that there is a button that they have to press to start the puzzle. And trying to suddenly communicate that there's a button that has to be pressed in kind of a hard to see area was very funny and very amusing, and I really enjoyed that part. That was fun. That was genuinely fun. But then actually the puzzle part of the puzzle is very mediocre, I would say. I think basically that puts it in A tier. It averages out, but it is funny how it's hard carried by a gimmick where basically you just kind of have to figure out a way to communicate without speaking, which will become a theme later. If you know, you know. Soundproof signs. It's funny that we are talking about that because this is almost the exact same puzzle. In fact, they're so similar that I got them confused. The one where you get jump scared is soundproof signs. That's the one where you have to find the button to press to kind of start the process and unlock these symbols. In soundproof buttons, you don't even get that. You just kind of point to where the button is, and like one of them is kind of behind a rock, I think, which makes it a slightly more complicated, but it's just a little bit too basic. I think you need a little bit more than this, at least if you're going to have puzzles that are so similar. So I think this is going to be a B or even C tier puzzle. I think it'll live in C tier. Even the fact that this is one of our first puzzles we solved, the novelty aspect could not carry this puzzle. It's just a little bit too simple with nothing really going for it. Cool. 2 telescope puzzles coming right up here. First up is telescope gestures, where one person goes around and strikes a bunch of poses on a bunch of pedestals, and a bunch of telescopes are off on a central platform where people can collect the response or collect the gestures and put them all in a code. So, it's fun, but it's just one of the ones where there's maybe a little bit too much walking. The person or people that have to go actually strike the poses, they just basically walk from one place to another. I think it's slightly complicated by the fact that you could get lost and not remember where they are. I do kind of wish that I don't know if this would be frustrating or more interesting, but I was relieved to know that there is no symmetrical poses on the actual signs, like this guy holding his hand out. You can't have one where the left arm is up and the right arm is down, and then a different one where the reverse is true, right? There's never going to be a symmetrical one. And I think that could be interesting because we did not account for that, mostly because I ran off uh, before we could come up with a plan, kind of as a joke. But yeah, no, we probably should have thought of that. And if there were symmetrical signs, we might have had to do some like on the fly puzzling of like figuring out whether the person indicating the sign, the gesture, is mirroring them for you, or maybe they're not mirroring them for you. And you could do some trial and error with that. And I don't think it would be that hard to figure out, but it could be like a fun little wrinkle to the whole puzzle, because it's otherwise a little bit too simple and a little bit too much walking. So where did I leave it? I've lost it. Here it is. Yeah, I think it might fit here in C. I think it's fine, but there is a lot of walking and not a lot of upsides to that walking. So there you have it. Telescope timing was a nightmare for our group because this is another one with a lot of walking, which is fine, but we could not figure out the timing when we first got to all of our positions. I think this is because it was nighttime and we didn't have enough light, and we didn't feel like waiting till morning, so we just kind of reconvened. And basically what that means is we had to come back and kind of think of a better plan and then redo it, which normally I would say is a good thing if your plan falls apart and you have to like, find a better system and talk through it. But in this case, if you overlap that with the puzzle where you have to walk really far away, just kind of the second time we had to go to the telescopes, it was a little bit too much. So maybe like some people thought this puzzle was fun, but for our group, I think it just took a little bit too long. I'm going to put it down and see. Cool. Timer House. This, I expect this to be a somewhat controversial puzzle, if you even want to call it a puzzle, among different people, because it is not really a puzzle at all. It is hilarious in its simplicity. If you don't know, you walk into the timer house and there's a giant TV with a timer on it for 5 minutes, and you lock yourself in that room. You just have to sit there until the timer is up. And there's like two elements at play that make that fun for me. One is that it's hilarious. A lot of the puzzles in this game are easy, but to have one that is just blatantly like you do nothing, you just literally wait out the timer, and that's the whole thing. That tickles me. That it makes me greatly amused. And also, I just think the other half of it is I just think it's like the most wholesome puzzle in the game, because like at the end of the day, what is it really asking you to do? You could just sit there for 5 minutes and like throw objects around or like do little parkour or whatever, but like I think the kind of subtext here is that like this is a game about hanging out with your friends, and this is like the game is basically just asking you guys to just catch up and talk about whatever you talk about and just see how you guys are all doing. And there's lots of time for that kind of thing, especially when you're walking around from place to place, but usually there's like something you're doing, some mission you're on, something in the distance you can comment about, and to just have a dedicated space to vibe and hang out, I don't know, it just puts a smile on my face. I think it's wholesome and fun, and I think we did have a good time when we were in the timer house. 5 minutes is not that long, so it's not like it was that hard, but it was just nice to chat. I also like that it has kind of a good vibe, good aesthetic in there, and there's a lot of like chairs that have custom poses, which is kind of fun. So they did give you like a little bit of stuff to play with, but overall, I'm sold on the concept of this puzzle. It's both hilarious that it's so simple, and it's just wholesome. I like that the game goes out of its way to stop and just be like, just hang out, like just be friends for a little bit. It's cool. Cool. Almost to the more interesting puzzle. It's just one left, and this is an interesting one to leave off on. This is the vertical obstacle course. This puzzle is cool because it is the only one that looks anything like this. It is so big and so deep. When I first saw it, I was like a little scared of it. I didn't even know that it like for sure was a puzzle because it looked so odd and big. And I guess it's kind of one of the other puzzles that asks you to kind of be more like parkour stuff, like jumping around and throwing stuff. And yeah, it's just kind of like, I don't know, it's like a novel change of pace. There's nothing quite in the game quite like this. But I think it kind of looks cooler than it actually is. Like throwing the box up from the bottom to the top is fine, but you kind of have to keep hopping down and going up the stairs over and over because there's usually not a entrance on whatever thing you're standing on. So you kind of have to keep backtracking over and over and over, which makes it a little bit annoying. And luckily, we never dropped the box down, but I think if you did, this puzzle might drive you insane because it's so much like going up the stairs over and over and over. So basically, this puzzle is 100% sold on vibes. It is cool looking. It is fun to jump down there like you're playing a dropper map. I like that the pear, the little MacGuffin, is in like a sealed box that looks like you just got it from a toy store and you have to go to the toy store opener machine. It's just like kind of weird and fun. But I think when you're actually doing it, it's not actually particularly fun. So this one I want to like a lot, but I don't really. So it's going to go in B. That seems right. Cool. Okay, we're going to skip these next few and go straight to these purple puzzles real quick. So if you don't know, on the other end of the island from where you spawn, there's kind of like a somewhat sort of hidden section. Hidden is maybe not quite right. I think you might need the ski lift to get over there, but there's like a somewhat hard to reach area that has a lot of upgraded versions of the puzzles we've already talked about. How many are there? I guess we can look. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we've seen all of these puzzles before, but there's something changed about them to make them harder. And as you'll soon find, I think for the most part, that is a good thing. A lot of puzzles in this game are really easy, and they're carried by the fact that you're just vibing with your boys. And like, it's just like a fun thing to do and like to banter and just do whatever, right? But very often you get to the thing, and maybe after like 30 seconds, you're like, okay, clearly this is what we do. Let's get it done. The purple ones are not necessarily that much harder, but they do often put a wrinkle in things in a way that is satisfying to get right. But I think it does vary. So let's just get into it. Purple button houses. Okay, just like button houses, there's a million buttons. I think they even have the exact same arrangement. There's a different house with a million lights. The light person has to communicate to the button person which one to press. One of them is lit up. But the fun little twist is that instead of communicating with, in our case, an intermediary person who has to play telephone to get the information across, you don't get to talk. You'll get a light bulb. And then the person who has the lights, I believe, just has to wait, was that right? No, I think the person with the buttons gets to communicate. No, I think it was the lights. I don't know. The point is, one person can only talk by flicking this light switch on and off, while the other person has to they just get to talk directly with the radio. So we didn't know that when we got in there until we were locked in. And it was pretty amusing to find that although Render and I had a button that we could use to talk to BSM could not hear us at all. And instead, he just kind of had to frantically communicate with this red light, which we quickly determined he was controlling. I think this was also our first red light puzzle, so it was a novel concept at the time. And man, this puzzle is just funny as hell. It's got all the upsides of regular button houses, which is that it's kind of fun to try to find a way to communicate which one of the 100 buttons you actually have to press. But it's the added benefit of it being really funny to talk to someone who can only talk through a light bulb. It's just very goofy. And like the way I remember it, like even though BSM just basically said yes and no, he somehow expressed so much like emotion and like, yeah, I guess just emotion through this fucking light. And Render and I were just cracking up the whole time. It was so much fun. I think this is even better than regular button houses. One of the best in the game. Maybe the best. We'll see. Next up, we have Purple Gesture Houses, Purple House. This is the one where, once again, one person communicates between the other two people which gestures to do. But in this case, they're actually not gestures, they're just a regular kind of symbols, right? Like your triple dots or your like half percentage sign or your butthole. And that's, I think this is a major improvement on the house puzzle because, like I said, what my main gripe with the gesture houses was that the symbols just tell you exactly what to do. You just strike the exact same pose. And while it's kind of fun, I guess, there's no room for expression or interpretation. And in this puzzle, it's basically asking you to come up with some kind of system. In our case, it was pretty simple. I think this is probably what most people do. We just traced the symbols with our hands as best as we could. And if you do it slowly and carefully enough, then it's pretty easy to figure out which one the other person means. And I mean, that's the fun part of it, right? Is like you're not exactly sure the other person will understand it. It's not as clear. You have to go kind of slowly and take a little bit of care. And that is just enough to elevate this puzzle. I don't think it's amazing, but I think I'm going to put it in A tier. It was fun. Next up is Purple Heavy Ball. Purple Heavy Ball. Okay, so Heavy Ball is the one where you take a heavy ball that you can't move with over to a golf course hole, and you have to just pass it around between each other. And the gimmick with this one is there is no ball. In order to, all you get is like a golf hole, and in order to actually complete it, you have to steal the ball from the other heavy ball puzzle and take it all the way here. And the best part about that puzzle, or this puzzle, is the realization that that's what you have to do. It is amusing to find out that the heavy ball is not only so annoying to carry around, but you have to do it from so far away. It is ridiculous and silly and fun. Now, of course, once you do that, or once you do realize that, you actually have to get it over there. And, you know, I think when I talked about the regular heavy ball puzzle, I did specifically note that that one does not overstay its welcome. And that's kind of what makes it fun. This one definitely does. It'll take you many minutes to get it over to where you need to put it. And it's a little bit annoying. I mean, I think part of like the fun part is like once you realize what you have to do, it is a little funny how annoying it is, but that doesn't change that it is annoying and time consuming. I think it is slightly elevated by the fact that you can incorporate your fast travel systems to make it easier. In fact, I think we used all three if you count the purple tunnel. But other than a little bit of routing you get to do, it is still just kind of a lot of waiting. And, you know, that was fine, but I would not say it was a standout. So I'm going to put it in B tier. I really do get a kick out of the concept, but it is very slow. Okay, next up is Purple Music Signs. So kind of like the heavy ball puzzle, I think this purple one is not an upgrade of the previous puzzle or of its counterpart. So the music signs puzzle is the one where you have to communicate which song the other person hears and then somehow get the other people who can't hear the song to match it to one of the speakers that they have. In the first puzzle, you have a radio. So obviously you just kind of try to make the sound with your mouth, and it is kind of funny and it works well enough. In this one, there is no such there's no communication device in the same way. So basically you're forced to just do it with your hands. Now, I have said that I like the puzzles where you have to come up with your own system, and this is a very creative puzzle. Like how do you communicate what a song sounds like with nothing but your hands and your arms and like jumping or whatever, right? The problem is, at least for our team, it proved to be a bit too challenging. We tried to make a system where like one side was high notes and the other side was bassy notes, and then you kind of can lift your arms up to the beat of the music, but like I don't know, most of them are like roughly the same kind of high-ish pitch, and it turns out it's kind of hard to like get the rhythm that the other person's trying to do with their hands. At least it was for us because the hand moves up and down. So if they're like moving it around a lot, it's really hard to like figure out what rhythm that they're trying to make. So we found it to be very difficult, and we basically ended up just getting together and kind of coming up with a almost like a dedicated hand gesture system for each speaker. It was kind of like an iteration on the original system we had, except like this time we went through each individual one, and we just kind of knew exactly what each one was. So it's cool that like we had to come up with that system, but I think it was a bit too like memorizey. Basically, we just had a dedicated symbol for each speaker, and although it was somewhat intuitive, it was just a little bit too time consuming and unintuitive. So I could see some people really getting a kick out of this, but for us, it didn't really hit as hard. At least for me, it didn't. I think I might even bump it down all the way to C because it just took so long, and I was kind of over it by the end. But maybe it gets a bonus point because of the Nokia ringtone, which still haunts my dreams, and that is in fact kind of funny. Cool. Couple more left to go. Purple obstacle course. I think this is what the obstacle course should have been. It's basically the exact same obstacle course, the only difference being that you have to bring the timer from the beginning all the way to the end instead of just being the last, I don't know, 1/4 of the obstacle course. And I think that's what makes this parkour interesting. The parkour for the obstacle course is pretty simple, right? It's not very hard to do, but it is a little more tricky when you have to do it quickly. And it's fun that there's like some optimizations you can do, like you can hold the door instead of jumping over top of the door once you have a person over there. And it was pretty fun to kind of route it. So I think this is a better version of the obstacle course, and I kind of wish that's what the original one was because it wasn't really even that much harder. The biggest downside was that if you fall on the purple one, you fall into the ocean, which is a little bit annoying. But it was pretty fun. I think it's better than the original. It's going to go in A. Next up, we have purple scribbled signs. I loved this puzzle. This is an iteration of the one where there's a bunch of really complicated symbols, and you have to describe with your voice what they look like in order to get the right pattern from one side to the other. The gimmick here, it's one of those puzzles where like you walk in and it's just hilarious how ridiculous it is. You're used to like walking into a puzzle and it's a 3x3 grid of signs, so 9 of them total. This one I think has like 30 or something like that. And when you see them all, and they're all of course facing backwards like every other sign puzzle is, it's it's a little tedious, I won't lie, but it's funny trying to like flip over every single one of these signs and get like the room is pretty small. It's kind of hard to even have them all face you. So it's just like a very comical situation, and I loved just dealing with it. It was funny. And the other upside is that like the original scribbled signs was just fun, and it's even more fun when there's like so many more options and it's a little bit harder. You have to be a little bit more specific. It was a little bit more challenging. Definitely got your noggin going a little bit. So really loved this one. I think it's not only another S tier one just like its brother, but I think it bumps it up a couple places because it's just funny and it's a little hard. Not very hard, but a little bit hard. Cool. Purple house timer. It's just the timer house again, but this time for half an hour instead of 5 minutes. You just sit there and talk. The biggest downside of this is this is like kind of a joke puzzle, and you've already seen this joke once. That's kind of the bulk of it. But the other half of why I like it is still true. I think it's a wholesome puzzle where you just get to chat with your boys, and half an hour is a respectable time. Like 5 minutes kind of goes by really, really fast. And like it's kind of over before you know it. You can really get into some topics in half an hour, but it's not like so long that it's like disgustingly long. So I think it kind of evens out. I think 30 minutes is a good amount of time, but it really, it is a bit of a joke puzzle in a way. And I think because we ran into it second, it was still amusing. but not as much as the original Timer House. All right, let me just take a quick break here and get some water, and I'll come right back for the last, what is that, 7? 1 sec. Okay, I'm back. I am no longer thirsty, and it's time to talk about the end game. If you have not rolled credits, you probably have not seen these last few puzzles. And to get a little bit more specific, there's a big black orb on the other side of the island that you play the game in. And if you get far enough in, you can enter the black orb where you will find 7 final puzzles to test your wits. Not test them very hard, but maybe a little hard. The whole gimmick of the Black Orb of Doom is that it has like a crazy reverberating effect that warps the world, and you can no longer hear anything your friends are saying at all. You also can't tell what colors they are, like what colors their bodies are. So it's really easy to mix up people because you can't hear them and you don't know which one's which. And that is quite an amusing little quirk to a lot of the puzzles. And I like how inherently it makes you kind of do a lot of the same stuff for these puzzles, but it's a little bit more tricky, and you have to kind of start relying on your how do you put it? Just like the patterns you've built up over the course of the game to kind of carry your communication, because you guys have already done a lot of this sort of thing before, and you can probably work it out even if without even talking. Now, I think the kind of what do you call it? Like the thing that kind of binds these puzzles together, like the overall theme, I guess, is they're all a little bit underwhelming. Like for the finale of the game, you kind of expect something a little bit harder, a little bit more tricky, even if it is, not supposed to be that hard. But they are all pretty simple. They're usually variants of stuff you've done before, and you can't talk to each other, but to be honest, your communication skills are not really tested that much. Now, I could see that being very different if you have a bigger group, because, well, I think it's just harder to coordinate a bigger group when you can't talk and you don't know who is who anymore. I could see it being very funny if you have 16 people running around the black orb like headless chickens, doing this or that, and nobody knows what anyone's saying or who anybody is. But it's cool though. I like how it kind of like levels the playing field, and you can't you just kind of a guy is a guy. Like you kind of just have to trust everyone in the same way. But for us, 3 players, it's not that many. It's not too chaotic. It was pretty simple to just kind of get through all of these in the same way as we had for all of the other stuff in the regular game. So, but yeah, I mean, there's some differences. So let's go through them real quick. First off is orb buttons. I mean, are these in order? I think the first one is orb room signs. Yes, this is the one where 2 people are in a glass compartment and have part of a sequence, and then the other person has to assemble the sequence. Basically, you just communicate symbols through a glass pane again. You've done this a million times before, which I think takes away from the puzzle. Again, you want it to be kind of climactic at the end here, and not being able to hear your teammates it's not even actually a new concept, because a lot of the puzzles previously, like the gesture houses or whatever, they also have glass you cannot hear through. So it's really no different from those at all. So I guess the biggest difference is you can't coordinate outside of the room. You can't leave and come up with a plan. You have to make the plan within the dungeon, right? But in this case, that was no problem at all. We just walked in and did it. So, I think if this puzzle was out in the world, it would be fine. But the fact that it was part of the finale honestly takes away from it, because you do expect it to be a little bit more climactic. It wasn't unpleasant, but it was not very good. I think it's going to go in C. I think the same can be said for the orb buttons, because in this one, it's one of those where one person has lights, one person has buttons, and you just have to press the matching button. And it's just one of those ones where there's only one way to solve it, and it's extremely obvious how. You just stand in front of the light that's on, and then the other person who has the buttons goes to their button and they press it. It is even more simple than I think I might even put this in D, because it's kind of insultingly simple. It it is one of the easiest puzzles in the game, and it's in the final dungeon, and not being able to communicate does not meaningfully impact how this puzzle goes at all. So it's a little bit disappointing. All of these are kind of carried by the aura of the orb. It's kind of sick when you're in there. It's dope. But, if you stand back and look at this puzzle, it's kind of like, yeah, I was expecting a little bit more. I think I'll go to the last underwhelming puzzle, which is Orb Relay. This one is over so fast, I was kind of shocked. We basically just sprinted down our respective corridors and pressed a button all at the same time. It was like, I don't even know what I was doing until I got to the button, and I just pressed it, and we, like, of course, what is there to do except to sprint down as fast as you can? So it just worked. Maybe there's a world where, like, you guys are moving at different speeds somehow, and it's easier to get out of sync, and you have to come up with a plan, but, like, I don't know, man. In practice, you just go. You just go at the same time, and there's enough leeway with what time you press the button that it doesn't matter at all. So, maybe for some people, if you have to come up with a plan, it's more interesting, but for us, it was so simple that I was shocked. This will go in D tier. Not very good. What's next? Orb window signs was probably the hardest puzzle we had in the orb because, I don't know, you have to have a bit of a system. Basically, how this one works is there's 3 chambers. Actually 2 people have the right combination of symbols, and 1 person has the pins with the symbols on them. And then one of the 2 people who has the combination also has a night vision, I guess not night vision, but an invisible ink telescope that can see what's on the otherwise blank signs. So, there was a blank sign puzzle earlier. It's kind of like that. It's just kind of like, I don't know, it's too obvious what to do, I guess. We had to kind of come up with the plan for, like, exactly how to denote which one goes where. It wasn't really that difficult, but at least we had to kind of think. Okay, what I'm saying is what I liked about this puzzle. This is the only one where we really had to interface with the mechanic where we can't speak. That's the only time it really came into play properly, where if we could just talk, it would be trivial to communicate the system. But in this case, we really had to kind of use just gestures and stuff to kind of work out what to do. And, the system wasn't that complicated, but ultimately we did have to kind of think about it a little bit. I think for almost every other orb puzzle, it was, like, really intuitive how to get around that mechanic. Cool. Wait, where does this go? I'm gonna put it in B tier. I don't think it was that fun, even if we did have to work with the can't talk mechanic. But I like that it makes you use it, basically. All right, next I want to talk about Orb Timer. This is the other one where we kind of had to try to communicate without talking, and it was, like, kind of noticeably hard to get an idea across because there is a gimmick to this otherwise very simple puzzle where you just throw a tomato timer back and forth from one side to the other. One person goes down one side, one person goes down the other, and you just toss it across a gap over and over until you put it in the right place. Seems really simple. You have to do it kind of fast, but the real gimmick comes from the fact that in 3-player mode, I think on 2-player mode this would be pretty boring, but in 3-player mode there is another door halfway through, and in hindsight it's pretty obvious what you do. You just have to put one of the people behind that door before you start the puzzle. But in the moment, it was kind of unexpected. We had no idea how to open this random door for, like, at least, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute maybe. And at some point I had to, like, try to, like, convince BSM to come with me and stand behind this door without talking to him. And basically I just had to frantically gesture and point, and that was fun. So I'm going to put it in A. Good stuff. Orb gestures. This one is pretty fun too. It goes into a family of puzzles where you just kind of have to come up with a system to communicate one set of symbols to the other. And this is one of the ones where one person was an intermediary, like a telephone player between the two of them. But I don't know, we've done this one we've done stuff like this so many times in the game at this point that it was pretty simple to just stand in front of them and, we basically just traced them out with our hands. And it's fun. I like the different noodle shapes. Those are new, but it's just a little bit too similar to other puzzles in the game, and the orb mechanic didn't really meaningfully impact it. So I think it was a little bit too samey and a little bit underwhelming as a finale. So it's going to go down here with the window signs. Yeah, I guess Orb Timer is the only one that's in A tier so far. And finally, Orb Kettle. This puzzle blows. It is really easy. It is depressingly easy. You just have to communicate which button to press. And again, one person has lights, one person has buttons, and a person in the middle has to communicate between the two. But in this case, the way I guess you're supposed to do it is to throw the kettle between the like over these walls in the right location to kind of indicate where the light is or where the button is. Man, if you hadn't played this game, I feel like that would make no sense at all. But if you have, you probably get the idea. The downside of this puzzle is it's kind of like instantly obvious what to do once you've realized what each room looks like, what each section looks like. The upside is that there's a kettle, and that was greatly amusing to our group. We took that kettle all the way to the end of the game because it's just such a fun little item. I talked about this before with the other kettle puzzle. It's just goofy. It's fun. It's fun to have around. It makes a funny noise even in the orb area where you're not supposed to be able to hear anything. So, the actual puzzle kind of sucks. I think it's too easy, but having a kettle throughout the rest of the puzzles was a delight, and that wouldn't be possible without this puzzle. So I'm not really sure what to do with that. I think normally it would be another D tier orb puzzle, but I do really love the kettle. Might bump it up not 1 but 2 tiers to B. It's still not great, but I do love that kettle. Oh, so much fun. Yeah, I think the best part about the orb overall is, you can't really joke around as easily, but if you try hard enough, you sure can. You can you can crack some jokes. You can throw the kettle around. You can wave at each other in a goofy way. So we had a blast running through the orb, even though the actual puzzles I think were a little bit mediocre or maybe it had been done before. And I think overall they're kind of just a little bit less of a finale than we were expecting, or at least I was expecting. But I still liked the orb overall because it had a cool vibe and it was dope. Cool. Well, that took way longer than I thought. I thought there were I don't know. It doesn't really seem like that long of a list of puzzles when you start. But I guess if you talk about each of them for 2 minutes, that's going to add up. But yeah, this is the objectively correct tier list. If you have played Big Walk and you have opinions about any of these, please do comment because I'm so curious. I think that there's probably a lot of room for different opinions based on which puzzle you do first, or how confusing they were, or how many times you got it wrong, or whatever you guys were joking about when you were playing. I'm even curious to know what my team members thought of all the puzzles and if any of them were significantly different from what I thought. Because I don't know, I feel like I was speaking for the group for a lot of these, for most of them, and that's probably pretty accurate. You can kind of, I think we were all pretty much on the same page for most of these, but there's probably at least 1 or 2 where we felt differently about them. Very curious. Well, do comment if you have opinions. But until next time, thanks for being here. See ya.